Our next guest is a certified wellness coach and certified health education specialist, the dean of the Nathan Weiss Graduate College at Kean University. She's also the author of Living Beyond the Façade, Inside the Health and Wealth Practices of Americans of African Descent, which identifies the 4 common characteristics shared by each of the people interviewed that reflect their active approach to health and wealth. Joining us now to share a little bit more is Dr. Christine Thorpe, author of Living Beyond the Façade, and welcome.
Thank you.
All righty. So it's an interesting topic, Living Beyond the Façade.
Yes.
And so talk about the facade.
Well, the facade actually is living beyond what we see, our truth. And I interviewed 60 people to talk about how they live their best health and wealth lives. So with these 60 people across the United States in major metropolitan areas, these are Americans of African descent, and they talked about the areas in which they challenge living healthier and improving their wealth. And this came about as a result of statistics that we know out there that people of color, particularly African Americans and Latinos, are going to be broke by 2053. And the statistics of our health disparities out there, living with and dying from a host of chronic illnesses. And the desire to do this book was to capture the stories and the truths of people who are going against the grain, to be able to give us some blueprints and lessons from their lives that we can pay forward to others. So they shared the 4 areas that came up as a result of the interviews: their consciousness, their mindfulness, their execution, and their discipline as it relates to health and wealth. And there's a desire to pay it forward to the next generation.
So when we talk about successful health, what does that look like?
Successful health is the actual mindfulness and consciousness of how we take care of ourselves. So with regard to our health, are we careful about what we're eating? Are we careful about how we're moving our bodies? And the people I interviewed talked about how they valued health as something that they saw in their previous generations lost by way of lost limbs from complications related to diabetes or heart disease, losing family members early and seeing this as the norm in the family and deciding, I need to change course here. I need to do something different because I don't want to pay this forward to my children, or I don't want to end up living the same way. There's got to be something better. There's got to be something different.
As you were writing, obviously you're taking this deep dive. What were some of the things that really stood out to you?
Oh my goodness, there's so many things that stood out to me. What was really apparent was the fact that the people I interviewed, several of them said that they were first generation comfortable. And they talked about the fact that they're still taking care of their family members as well as taking care of children, but also recognizing that there were lessons that they may not have learned that they had to learn in their adult lives. And the fragmentation of families throughout our histories contributes to the difficulty in being able to develop newer practices, best practices that will enable us to live healthier, make different choices, and be able to balance that with the hectic lives that we're living today.
You talk about generational legacy.
Yes.
And it's important to leave a legacy. How do you define generational legacy?
Generational legacy is defined as that which we are planning to pay forward to our children with respect to, for this book in particular, the health practices and the lessons that we've learned to take care of ourselves, as well as wealth practices. How are we preparing our children to save for the future? We've had a lot of, people in the last handful of years talking about teaching our children how to, manage their accounts and pay, set up stocks and bonds and understand how the market works. How are we living it? And how are we preparing for the next generation to take the baton and run with it? So the generational legacy goes on not just for our children, but we'd like for it to go on to our children's children. We would like to see more than just one generation move on with the lessons learned, that it's sustainable, something that we can say is indigenous to our families going forward.
I know you're doing some great work in terms of wellness, but then also in terms of podcasts. You got a podcast coming out soon in 2020?
Yes, my husband, who happens to be a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley, and I do a lot of these conversations together because he's the wealth side of it, I'm the health side. We have a lot of great conversations, and we are pulling together heads of households, single heads of households or couples to talk about what they do structurally as families? What are their mission statements? And it was an interesting question to ask people, what is your family mission statement? And you get the lean back and say, oh, a mission statement for a family.
Right.
But we're talking with people because we believe that in these basic conversations of how we start to shape our families from the very beginning, this is how we start to chart the course, and this is how our children are able to get the lessons that they need to be able to carry forward who we are within our families, within our communities, and shape their identities going forward, and being able to pass that to their children. But that legacy of again, health and wealth, what your values are, what you stand for as a community, as a family unit, and it drives your goals. We're getting ready to jump into 2020. Everybody has some kind of dream for 2020, what they see on the horizon.
We call them resolutions,
yeah,
right?
Some people call them resolutions, some people call them all kinds of stuff. But what we want to do is, how do those impact your home unit? How does that impact what you plan on paying forward and keeping within your family and growing, for the generations to come?
You mentioned, and I had to take a look back and say, mission statement, right, for a family, right? That's not normal, common practices, but if you really talk about creating a successful, healthy path, it's one of the things families ought to do.
Well, you have companies that form mission statements. You think of organizations that have some kind of vision and goals as well. Why not with your family? Why not start with the most basic unit that you are part of? And using that, it anchors every decision that you make. If we plan on going on a vacation, how does that impact your family's mission and vision? If you plan on your children going to a particular school, how does that impact your family's mission and vision for the future? And being able to see each other as a unit and not as individuals going in many different directions, but understanding that we need to move together. We need that unit, that strength, in order to grow and build.
So as you look back this year, like, what would you say the primary focus for you has been when it comes to this whole area of wellness?
The primary focus for me in the area of wellness has really been to make sure that mentally and physically we're centered. I know for my family, it was really important for us to make sure we keep to our schedules and be as stable as possible, because we're running in a lot of different directions.
Right.
And with regard to health, introducing to my children and still practicing with them things like yoga and understanding the value of breathing. Because life gets stressful, get really busy, and I get it, and I say, okay, let's get on the mat and let's stretch a bit and let's breathe and let's do a little downward facing dog and take a yoga pose. And I've had my son say, Mom, that was really helpful. I got a little stressed out today and it really helped me to center myself. And being able to demonstrate it with my children and have them take that on as a practice for their health means for me that I'm banking into their future legacy of health, and wellness overall.
Well, that's awesome. Dr. Christine Thorpe, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. And we want to get you more information about Dr. Thorpe, so thank you. And listen, if you want more information on Dr. Christine Thorpe, yes, check her out on Instagram at Living Beyond the Façade, or